this. There we go. So welcome everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to our tips and tricks coffee break for SAP Business One. Today, Mike Taylor is going to be showing us how to handle accounts receivable, invoices, and credit notes. So thank you, Mike. Thanks for being with us.
All right, here we go. Thanks, Tracy. Next slide. So as Tracy mentioned, today I'm going to be talking about different ways of creating and paying invoices. We'll talk a little bit about down payments, creating credits, briefly about RMA scenarios, and then how to pay out your credits. So I'm going to jump into my demo system here. So there are several different ways that you can make an invoice. Just to review, the two ways I think about it is the copy to method and then the copy from method. So the copy to method uses a base document like a sales order, copy to. You can go directly to the invoice, generally with a more, a more complex process will do the delivery as well. Maybe you could say maybe a more mature process, there's a delivery document, but there's nothing stopping you from going directly from the sales order to the invoice directly. That copy to is a one-to-one relationship, meaning the one set of documents, or so the one set of items will go to your invoice. And if you bill if you do the invoice for all of the items, each of the rows that you've done from the copy to closes the base row. You can edit and remove, you can change quantities, you can remove rows as well. And whatever is invoiced will be locked up on the base document, but anything that's not invoiced will be open to allow you to do another invoice potentially. So the copy to method, I'll just show you from delivery as well. So you can either go from a sales order, you can go from a quote to quote to order to invoice. It kind of depends on your industry and your business preferences and kind of the maturity of your process and your warehousing process. So you can go copy to invoice exactly the same way with the delivery. You can remove rows, you can short ship them by changing the quantities, and you do this all before you do your add. So if you're using SAP Business One 9.3, you will just have the add button, but in V10, they added add and view. Add and view, add and new, which would have been basically the default below, from 9.3, 9.2, it would have been like the add and new. You can now click add and view, which will add the document and come back, add and close, which will add the document and close the window, or add and new, which will add it and then prompt you to go to another invoicing window. Okay, so that's the copy to scenario. What you can also do is a copy from scenario, which can be used as a one-to-multi relationship with the base documents. So you can go so, and then you'll go copy from, and you can select a base type of document. So let's see, I think I have some deliveries, and you can see there are multiple open deliveries. I can use my regular Windows Control or Shift mechanism, just like in Excel or anything else. And I could select all the list of base deliveries and draw these all into a single invoice using this wizard. So you can see there's a couple different things. Use current exchange rate, it's default, and to draw all data, you can use customize in the copy from methodology, which makes it a little bit easier, I would say, to control and shift click your way through what you want to use to sort it. Especially if you have a large number of items, you can sort them, or you can look at the base document, and then you can choose which ones you want to draw into that final document. And it will link the base documents the exact same way as the copy to methodology. So if you do the copy to methodology, you're usually just going to have one set of documents and it will do the link, but then it will, in a copy from scenario, you would be able to close and finish off both of these deliveries, meaning if I add all these documents, finish, if I clicked add and view, it will actually close all of the base documents that I drew into the document. So you can keep adding more and build this up, and any of those rows that remain in the invoice will be closed and properly reconciled in the flow of documents, including the link to the relationship map. One piece of critical information here is if you remove this, just copy this, you remove that row and then you add it back because you don't want to start over again, the removal and the adding has now destroyed the link between this document and the base document. So when you go back and you look at the base document, you are not going to have closed it properly because you adding this manually to the invoice, the system does not know what the base document was and will not do the link from a data standpoint properly. You would want to cancel and restart, unfortunately, in order to draw it into the final document more effectively. If you end up having a whole bunch of different pieces of, or sorry, a whole bunch of different item codes that maybe repeat themselves, you can also check out the summary type and it will allow you to summarize by items, which will just make things cleaner for the printout. But warning that not all of the Crystal Reports layouts will support this, and it might only be what you're seeing on screen. You don't necessarily, like when you're doing working with SAP Business One, the columns you are seeing here are not immediately transferred to your printouts. The Crystal Report can be 100% completely independent, so keep that in mind. Your form settings do not constitute a change in your actual printouts. So the same way as you see that, if you do want to summarize and you are often drawing similar items from many deliveries into your invoice, you can get us to massage your Crystal Reports layout and have it show up in a nice and clean way. So you can just remove all these, Control K, it's your tip of the day. If you click in a row, Control K is delete row, the shortcut. You can also right click, and if this was a row, you say delete row, copy from deliveries again, Control, click. You can just draw all and finish if you're not going to change it. And now you have restored the link. You can still change the quantities. Again, whatever you change, remove, or modify in here, it will either close or leave the base documents open or closed. So that is the two methods of, well, the few methods of making it. You're either going to do from sales order directly, you can go quote to order, and whatever makes sense for your business process to reinforce the best way of you doing it. Do you want to go from a sales order to a pick list, have the warehouse pick it and make a delivery, and then it can either automatically be drawn over to an invoice. You can use the document generation wizard. I'm not going to talk about that too much. You can use the document generation wizard to bulk copy over documents. You can look into that or ask us for help with that too. But however you want to or you can draw multiple documents into one final invoice. So however it makes sense for you in your business process to get the best out of that, it can be accommodated. And any base documents will know what has been shipped and billed, and then you can always have those documents remaining. And if you remember in SAP Business One, a back order is just an open sales order that wasn't drawn through to the delivery and invoice or to the invoice directly. So there's two ways to do your payments on an invoice too. So there is what I like to call the direct way, and then there's what I like to call the indirect way. So the direct method, prior to you adding the document, you can use the payment means icon down here, aka money bags, you can use the same icon here. They put it in both locations now. So I think you can also right click it. It might be in here too. Payment means, yeah. So you can right click too, depending on what you want to do. And you can click and enter how this invoice was created or paid prior to adding it. So in a single step, you can do a direct payment. So I can go in here. Remember, I've added up all my invoices or all my items. I have my totals. I've double checked my prices. If you want to change your prices, you can go to form settings, document, change your price list. If that's all good, then you can add it and view it, and that will just add it on terms, right? So you'd have your net 30, which was set up with the customer. But if you are going to pay it, say you have kind of a pseudo point of sale system and you're just adding this, the customer's there waiting or at some service, maybe they paid you by credit card, they already did the bank transfer, something like that. Click your payment means. You can use all the regular suspects here. So you can go bank transfer, cash. I won't go into these too much, but just say for cash, this is your default. Click in this field here for the total, right click, copy balance due, or you can use Control B, draw that in, click OK. You can mix these two if you want. When this is like that, once you add it, it will process both the invoice and the incoming payment at the same time. So that is what I call the direct method. It has to be done prior to adding the invoice. Otherwise, you will have to do the indirect method. And I'll show you the indirect method right now. Indirect method is from banking. I'll do that again. I maybe went too fast. Banking, incoming payments, incoming payments. The reason I call this indirect is obviously it's not directly on that invoice that you have created there. You're adding that invoice. Most businesses have some sort of terms. They'll send that invoice. Once this is added, you'll either email it. If you print it and send it, you could PDF and email it. You can fax it. You can do whatever you want. And once the customer has those, generally they're going to take their terms, obviously, and they are going to then send you a check with a check stub. So that's kind of the most, I would say probably the most common for B2B scenarios. And you will come in here, banking, incoming payments, bring up your customer's name. Then you will see the list of outstanding documents. This is a demo system, so I'm pretty overdue. Come in here, you can see the document number, whatever they have indicated that they are going to pay, you check that. If there are credit notes, journal entries, I don't think I have any journal entries in here, any sort of adjustments, whatever they're going to pay, add those up. If you're partially paying or they're taking a cash discount, you can actually do, your 210 net 30. You can do partial payments on the row. You just want to get it so that you have exactly what's being paid in the check, assuming it's correct enough to take the payment. Do your same payment means here or in this icon, probably in the right click too. Same exact process, but this will indirectly pay that invoice and also your other invoices as well. So whatever you're going to pull into there, whether it's a check, multiple checks, mixing, bank transfer, etc. Once you've selected the payment means, you click add. That will reconcile the amount on the payment with the document itself, closing the documents properly that have been paid, and nicely bringing everything together in terms of a relationship map. Okay. So I'm just going to pay this one. I'll pay it by cash. And I'll just add it. So if I go back and I look here, you can see this. What was this one? You can see this was paid indirectly. I will look at my relationship map and you can see nice sales order, nice order to cash, order, delivery, invoice, payment. So again, relationship map, right click, relationship map. I hope you're familiar with this. You can always double click on any of the base documents and it gives you a nice overview of everything. So this is a nice chain of the easiest scenario possible, a straightforward sales order, an easy peasy delivery where everything was in stock, there's no differences in prices, and then a nice payment at the end that matches perfectly to the invoice amount. Another scenario you might run into is your down payments. So we are going to just do a quick down payment, and then we will link that in with the invoice, and I'll show you just a couple details on that. Pro tip here now, with version 10, you can calculate taxes properly even on a down payment invoice. Okay, this has been a big, I would say, gap, especially in Canada, where if you didn't pay 100%, so if you weren't using an AR reserve invoice to completely prepay 100%, you would not have any tax calculations on the down payment. So let's take a quick look at that. So we do the order, we're going to do a down payment, copy to, down payment. So you see this, I'm going to just do 100%. You can see now taxes have been enabled. Administration system initialization document settings. Just be careful if you're in a live system. You don't want to just flip this with no consideration for your printouts or anything like that and your processes. If you do want to make this transition, let's test it in the test database. Just get in contact with us. You will need to be on V10. So if this is something that makes sense for you to get up to V10, this is something that I would say would heavily drive companies that are prepay heavy into V10. It will make a big change. I know I have a few customers that will overpay the down payment in order to cover taxes, but it's quite difficult in some cases to keep that all nice and clean. So I'm just going to do the 100% down payment. You can see taxes are being calculated there. I'm going to do what I refer to as the direct payment. So just to make it quick, I'm just going to pay. I'm taking a lot of cash today. Close this. Close this. So I go back to my order. I can click relationship map button. So now I see I have a nice down payment and an invoice or down payment invoice and a payment. I'm going to copy this order to the delivery. We're going to do this normally. We've sent the pick list from the sales order to the warehouse, or they've used some sort of method to pick it. They've found all the items in stock. We're going to add it. Got to watch out for my stock levels in my demo system there. This is delivered. Now we're going to copy this to an invoice. Because we have 100% prepaid down payment here, we are going to see that it links through with the total, and it's going to handle the whole thing here. So the whole document has been prepaid. You can click on total down payment to see the details if you need to with the ellipses button. You can modify or draw various amounts of your down payments into the document. If you made the down payment in the chain of documents, it will know that this is what the down payment was for, and it will apply it. And we can just add and view. Document total is 0 because it is already 100% prepaid. And we can look at our relationship map here in order to see the nice relationship map, which is it's kind of fun. You can move this all around. So this is kind of cool to see it. And again, keeping those links, it's pretty important to be able to quickly go to one of these documents, see what happened. It's very detailed if you've done multiple documents, multiple deliveries, had cancellations, had changes. You're going to see that all together. Okay, so I want to talk quickly about cancellation versus crediting. So if we look at a specific delivery, I think I probably paid all these. Let me just look for an open one. So you can right-click cancel. You will be prompted with a cancellation invoice, and you can add this. It's kind of unusual, I think, maybe at first to have to add a cancellation document, but this is how SAP works. And once the cancellation document has been added, it will reverse the main this document here, and it will reopen your base document. So if this was based on a delivery, the delivery itself would be reopened. So you can see now that the invoice is canceled and the delivery is open, and you could then copy to an invoice again. So if you need to redo something or you've made a mistake, you could cancel back to the delivery, cancel back to the order even, redo the delivery, redo the invoice. If you go from the invoice and you credit it, it's not necessarily going to open up the sales order. So if it's more of a mistake and you don't need to record a credit, you can use the cancellation. If you do need to give a credit, you can go ahead and just pick one of these, copy to, AR credit memo, and this would be the direct credit method. So I'm going to call this the direct credit method, where I go from a copy to, from the invoice to the credit memo. You can, before you add it, remember you can change if you're only going to do a couple of things. You can use the without quantity posting checkbox to stop SAP from returning this quantity back into stock. It will just do the credit at this price and give that credit to the customer, but it will not return any stock into your inventory. So if something is not coming back, it was broken in transit and you're not going to get it back, this is how you handle that. Add that. The indirect method would be
Mike, hang on a sec. I just want to ask you something. What you just did you just credit one line from the invoice?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so yes, it can get a little confusing, I would say, but again, with the basing it on the document. So the invoice is still partially open, but I just did one row credited on that. So you can always change those rows or dollar amounts in between the base document and the target documents. So the indirect method would be to start with the credit memo and either manually add the item, and then maybe you're just going to give them a credit for this amount. This will be a completely independent credit memo. You don't want to do any, you don't want to relate this to any other document, or maybe it's a service type and you're not going to relate it to anything. So you can completely give them the money back, just completely manually. And there's another way. If you've already paid the invoice, let me just pick a closed one. Pick this one. If this document is already paid and reconciled, you can see this is closed and that your copy to is grayed out. So you're like, oh, shoot, this is annoying. They want a credit for this, but we already shipped it. There's a little trick. You can right click, change document status to open, click update, and now it's available to do a return request or a credit memo. So you could copy this now to a return request. If you're sending only one item, if you only want one item back and one item is coming back on a return, then just clear out the other rows. Add the return request as a document. The return request is an RMA, return materials authorization, so that you could send this document to the customer and say, hey, send this back. And when you send it back, we will turn it into a credit memo. So the return request is a soft document that doesn't process anything until your items are back. You inspect them, and then you will return them into, regular stock or refurbished stock or write-off or whatnot. You can also simply go from the invoice to the credit memo. And you could do your regular credit this way too. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to give them the full credit. Maybe nothing's coming back. You can use your without quantity posting. Again, no stocks coming back in, but you can do that process still from a closed and fully paid invoice without having to do a manual credit memo. and it will also show up nicely in your relationship map. So it's not something that you can't do a whole bunch of stuff back and forth with the credit memo. It's you know, it's kind of like a one-shot deal. I don't believe you can reopen it again. You get kind of that one shot, but still, this is an amazing option for people that need to reopen a document and copy it to a credit, even when it has been paid, and it will keep it clean in the chain of documents, so you don't have this random AR credit memo just hanging out where you don't know where it came from. So the final thing I want to talk about is paying out your credits. Take a sip of coffee. To pay out your credit, you could do the direct method too. As you're making it, you can do the same thing as you did for an invoice. And you can use your payment means. Oh, actually, you can't. My bad. Guess you can't. So the indirect method, which is what I was going to show here from the outgoing payments, because you're giving money back. Outgoing payments. Pull up my customer. Oh, my bad. So made a rookie mistake here. I have to switch it to customer. Outgoing payments to customer. Pull in my customer, and then you'll see the credits. So the one that I just created, you pick your credit there. You can, again, partially pay, add a bunch of different, you can add multiple credits. If I was going to give pay all these credits back, I'm just going to do the one here in the demo system. Use your payment means, pay back. Now we can pay by check, queue it up into our check run. So this would be thrown into the regular check run situation. You can see it as check number 0. That doesn't mean it's broken. That just means it has not gone through the check run process. So it has not officially been assigned a check. You do not need to put manual check and put the manual check. You could queue up 10 checks, pay check 6, and that will tell you that it needs the next pre-numbered check stock, and then do the other 9. So anyways, this is all how it should be. If you need help with the check payment processor, we have other videos, or just get in touch with us. So I can do the payment means however I want, however I'm going to return the money, do that and add it. Change it, add it, and that will do the payment to here. And we'll go to the relationship map, and we should have a nice spider web kind of going here. So this is kind of what a chain could look like with a sales order to delivery. And then you credited back, they paid, you credited back the whole amount, and then you paid the whole amount back. So we covered creating, paying invoices, direct and indirect method, copy to, copy from. Covered the down payment scenarios briefly. You can now calculate tax on them as a V10. It's worth upgrading. Take a look. Creating credits, you could do it direct from the invoice. You can also, don't forget, canceling the invoice will open up the base document without actually making a credit if you made a mistake or need to add something. You could do an indirect manual credit as well, where you start manually from a credit memo and add the items or the service GL account links there. Or you could change an existing paid invoice from closed to open status using that right-click special option and then pay that out. You can also create RMAs from a reopened invoice. And we learned how to do an outgoing payment. Make sure you select the customer there. I made that mistake too, because maybe I was rushing a bit for the time. And you could pay that directly out using the indirect payment method, just like the invoice. And that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Mike. Does anybody have any questions? You have there's a Q&A box at the bottom, or maybe it's on the top of your menu, I'm not sure, on your Teams Q&A if anybody has any questions. No, very interesting, Mike. Thanks a lot. Very appreciated. You know, these are sessions that we should be doing more often. You know, this kind of basic, you know, that this is basic stuff that needs to be showed to people, you know, so very appreciated. So nobody seems to have any questions. So I thank you all. This is our last session for our summer break, and we'll be back in June. So thanks so much. Thanks again, Mike.
Okay.
Have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.